how do I get rid of my love handles? I'm at my goal weight, so I've lost all the weight that I want to, but I still have love handles on my body. Is there any targeted toning I can do to get rid of that extra fat?
Okay, so there was actually some discussion that I kind of remembered at Metabolic Health Summit that was really interesting, and it kind of ties directly to this topic of, can I spot treat fat or adipose sites or subcutaneous, love handles, those areas of our body where we tend to accumulate fat that we really, really don't like, that are really visible. There's a lot of research over the last 40, 50 years that says that spot treatment is not a thing, right? That you can't really spot treat fat. But there is more and more research coming out now that says, well, maybe that's not true, or maybe we didn't really understand what was happening. So there is, when you work out an area that might be covered by a certain spot of fat. So for me, I have a little baby pooch down here right below my belly button. It's always been there. But if I were to work out that area, say doing crunches or something like that, and recruiting those muscle fibers that are underneath that fat, the chances of me burning that local fat, the fat that's closest to that muscle, is greater than burning fat that is somewhere more distant in my body.
Interesting.
Right? So I wouldn't necessarily be trying to burn fat that's on my chest if I'm working out a muscle that's underneath my, in my belly. So along with that, so now I'm going to go talk about insulin sensitivity, is timing of your workout, especially if you're trying to spot treat these areas, is even more important, because you're wanting to be as surgical in your approach as possible, right?
Okay.
So our adipose sites tend to be, and adipose sites are your fat sites, tend to be more insulin sensitive in the morning hours. So from the time you wake up until around noon, when they might be the highest. And they really drop off at the end of the day. So if you're the type of person whose schedule dictates that they do workouts in the evening, you might not have your adipose sites, your fat sites, might not be as insulin sensitive in the evening as they were in the morning. So if you could work it out to find time in your morning to do your exercise, and I've had to do that. I used to work out in the evenings, and now I work out in the mornings, and I do, anecdotally feel like I get better results working out in the morning.
So you're saying anytime in the morning up till around the lunch hour. So even if people could do their workout over their lunch hour.
Yeah,
that would be better
the research
than an
that I was
evening
looking
workout.
at showed a almost like around 8 a.m. when it really starts to rise all the way through like noon.
Okay.
Is when your adipose sites or your fat cells are their most insulin sensitive. And why is that important? Well, you don't want, insulin sensitivity is that measure of how much insulin does it take to do whatever insulin's doing, right? Doing its signaling thing, letting glucose into the blood cells, letting ketones into the blood cells, or into the muscle tissue and fat tissue. So the less insulin it takes, the more insulin sensitive you are, the better fat burning capability you will have. So you want a more insulin sensitive cell that requires less insulin, and that will ramp up your fat burning, your lipolysis.
So is this, when you talk about like localized fat sculpting, right? Essentially, so if you want to get rid of your love handles, you would work your abs and your... Is that only for the keto diet, or is that study overall?
That study was overall.
Okay.
So the interesting bit I heard at Metabolic Health Summit is that, and I'm going to go back and listen to this again because I want to make sure I got it right, and I'll correct myself later if I didn't, is that fat is more insulin sensitive than muscle is in the morning, and it kind of like starts to flip during the day. So I would say if you're wanting to burn fat, the morning is the time to do it.
Sometime before noon.
Before noon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if you're trying to spot treat and you're targeting fat and not necessarily muscle building, that's the combination I think would work really well.
Okay.